Welcome back, everybody, to the Victory World Cup of VGC, sponsored by Elgato. I'm back. My name is David Partington, and I'm also back with Stefan Mott. How are you doing, sir?
Pretty good. I got a little bit of a break as you guys got to cast the home match. Pretty cool match, though, gotta say. You can always trust Flavio to bring some sauce to his matches. Very, very creative team builder. Really, really cool to see it pay off.
It was, yeah. It's definitely something refreshing from the usual Insins, Ashin, Rilla pivoting stuff that we've seen a lot of. A lot of players like we've seen this stream anyway, going with something a little bit more safer, let something maybe more less creative actually, and then suddenly Flavio comes out with this. Like, I love it. But anyway, we're getting into USA versus El Salvador today, and we've got Sohaib Mufti versus Geovanni Polanco. And as we can see here, the United States and El Salvador have had a busy week, so obviously saving all their games for the weekend at the moment. So it's still 0-0, but it is 7 versus 7, as we've said before. No draws, win or lose. So it's a big match either way for both these players. So Geovanni Polanco of El Salvador with Kyogre, Serena, Tornadus Incarnate, Ferrothorn Incineroar, and that Zapdos Cantonian form with some excellent achievements there too, but very recent as well. Top 16 in the Players' Cup 4 Latin qualifiers, top 13 in the Players' Cup 1 Global Finals, which is incredible, and an excellent 2019 regional runner-up there too.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting matchup, right? I mean, in almost any match, you're going to expect the United States to be the favorite. But El Salvador really is one of those teams that could take it to them. They've got some incredible players, and Geovanni is one of them. But, of course, the reason the U.S. are one of the favorites to go very far in this tournament is because they, too, have some incredible players, and Sohaib is one of them.
And yeah, here he is with the Calyrex Shadow Rider, which is, I think, one of the first on stream today. Rillaboom, Incineroar, Suicune, Landorus Incarnate Form, and the Regieleki. And his achievements, top 9 in the North American Players' Cup 4, top 32 in North American Internationals, and Regionals top 8 twice in previous years. So he's a very formidable player and very experienced too, it looks like, as well. So we've got an interesting matchup going to this. And by the way, Sohaib is 6th in the total rankings of the entire the World Cup VGC. He's 5-0 for his team. So even for the US, which are already a strong team, he is one of the strongest.
He's a streak master. I mean, we saw the Players' Cup top 9 for the NA Regional Players' Cup last time around. That's a great achievement, but I think honestly more impressive than that final placement is the fact that he went 9-0 in the Swiss of that tournament. So Sohaib, when he gets going on a streak, it's very, very tough to break that streak. And that's going to be something that's giving him a lot of energy going into this match. And of course, every single match matters at this stage of the tournament. So he's going to be very, very motivated. He's going to want to go through and start things off strong for the United States. It's going to be interesting to see how well this goes. You know, it's a match without a single Zacian, which is a nice break from tradition as this stream has been going.
Hey, you've got to focus on the positive, Stefan. So we've got Kyogre, Tornadus, and Serena already kind of locked in for Giovanni's perspective here. And so also maybe one of our first Kyogres actually this stream too, but some very familiar supporting casts. The Ferrothorn, though, is quite interesting. Not something we've seen a lot of at the moment in this format. And it looks to be something that I could see maybe bringing to a game 2 or 3 here. It matches up quite well with a lot of things. It's just Incineroar really threatens it. But Calyrex Shadow Rider with that just blistering speed and immediate offensive pressure probably just threaten it a little bit. And no amount of iron defensing is going to save you from it. And you can't even body press it if that is your set, which Leftovers kind of maybe does indicate, rather than say something like the Assault Vest where you might run knockoff. So it's going to be on this Kyogre to be doing most damage here, it looks like.
Interesting as well to see the Scarf Kyogre. Of course, Scarf Kyogre with Tornadus has been a staple of the meta since really the beginning of Series 10. But more recently, we've sort of seen the rise of the Calm Mind Leftovers Kyogre set. So seeing a bit of a return to tradition with this Kyogre team. And I'm sure this is something that Sohaib will have at least run some lines against, and we'll see just how this goes. The lead's coming out. It's going to be a Suicune Regieleki versus Serena and a Tornadus.
Yeah, so both players are leading their mode of speed control here. Both got Tailwind. One's got Electro Web on top of that as well, which I really like in this matchup. But kind of the combination where you maybe stagger your Tailwind a little bit, or even if you match Tailwinds, you still have that Electro Web to kind of get ahead of your opponent. So I like Sohaib's lead here. He offers a lot of damage output versus Tornadus, which is what you want to be setting up your speed control with. But especially if it's that Volt Switch, you can get out of there before the Serena can even hit you. So it's a really solid lead, but Geovanni's also got that pivoting power too. If he gets up that Tailwind too, U-turn slowly right out into his Kyogre, he can offer a lot of damage output as well.
Interesting decision to go for the Electro Web here. There's no Wakan on that Tornadus, so going to be able to do quite a lot of damage there. The Serena, as we saw, is planning on going for a Power Whip into the Regieleki, so that kind of covers a little bit for a Volt Switch, and is going to proc any potential Focus Sash. It looks like that is going to be a Focus Sash on that Regieleki. Now the big question is going to be, what does the Suicune go for? And it's going to match Tailwind for Tailwind. So that Electro Web coming in clutch, despite both sides having the Tailwind. The -1 speed on both sides for Geovanni is just going to allow Sohaib a little bit more tempo in this game.
Does look like it. So no positioning yet, no pivoting out quite yet either. I think, like, especially as you don't know if either player is actually going to click the Tailwind button this turn, even though both have it, because you always want to like stagger your Tailwinds like the ending after the opponents because it puts you in such a strong position. So, but both players are definitely going for their speed control from turn 1. And now actually Zapdos can turn form is the switch in here.
Ooh, and a Helping Hand coming in. What's the target? Is this going to be a single target? No, it's not. Just another Electro Web coming on in. Should be able to dish out quite a lot of damage to the Zapdos with that Helping Hand, and it does. The Serena also falling down to about 75-70%. But the Serena's going to be able to pick off this Regieleki with no problem. You turning right on out of there. Zapdos, though, with that speed drop is going to be a little bit unfortunate. One of the things that's always really scary against a Calyrex Shadow Rider team is that the Shadow Rider player doesn't really need to be KOing your Pokemon. It just needs to be putting them into range to go down to an Astral Barrage. And so far, Sohaib is doing a pretty good job at doing just that.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's just such a scary Pokemon too. Once it's on the field in that correct position, it's just very hard to get rid of. And there's not a lot of Wide Guard going around either. So Stakataka isn't in this mode at the moment. There's no Mienshao here either. And yeah, here it comes actually. We also don't know what item Calyrex is either. So it's often like maybe a Focus Sash, maybe a Life Orb, but I've even seen some Choice Scarf going around, maybe just a Spell Tag to kind of bluff the Sash that you're not Life Orb. But yeah, it's a really fun Pokemon to use, and it does a lot of damage. And once it takes one KO, it gets even stronger for the next one.
Yeah, this is also going to be an interesting sort of matchup, because if it is Scarf, it will outspeed the Scarf Kyogre. So Geovanni may be thinking, you know what, I have the Scarf, we both have Tailwind, my Kyogre is the fastest thing here. But then suddenly, if that Calyrex is Scarfed itself, that's going to be very, very painful. Helping Hand coming in from the Suicune. Looks like Geovanni was expecting a Protect, but it doesn't quite happen that way. The Water Spout's going to come on in. How much does it do? Not quite enough. That Calyrex is going to live, and it will survive potential recoil damage from a Life Orb as the Astral Barrage comes on in, and that should be more than enough to pick up a Zapdos, and the Kyogre drops very, very low.
Yeah, so a massive amount of damage coming out this turn. So we've seen the Sash on the Regieleki, I believe, so we know it's not Focus Sash on this Calyrex, but we have seen it obviously do a lot of damage with the Helping Hand. Question is, though, I think that it's probably still in range of a Water Spout even now, because it's really low, but it's going to be close, I think, whether it actually goes down or not. Kyogre is in the rain here, but Calyrex also is very low. It depends what the Water Spout power is at the moment with that 37 HP. But Suicune is looking very strong, actually. It's often one of those Pokemon that can really sit on the field and not really do a whole lot, and especially if you don't mind taking a Scald, but with the Helping Hand, it's able to have that offensive presence on the field for Sohaib. So I really like the Helping Hand there, which not a lot of Suicune are running, actually. So it really fits in nicely with the offensive nature of his team, with that Regieleki, the Landorus. Like, you just get up the speed control of it, and then it sits in the field and makes all those really powerful Pokemon even stronger. So Calyrex has even picked up a KO at the moment, but Geovanni has still got the speed control, especially if this Water Spout is enough, then he's looking in like a good position.
The nice thing for Sohaib is that he has confirmed the Scarf, because that Kyogre was faster. So he knows the Kyogre is just going to be clicking Water Spout. He doesn't have to worry about a Thunder coming into that Suicune or anything like that. which means that the Suicune should outspeed this Tsarina and maybe even be able to pick up the Kyogre kill. Oh, actually, never mind. The Power Whip comes in, and that's going to be enough to take out the Suicune. So I was thinking a Scald might be able to pick off the Kyogre, but no, the Kyogre safe to Water Spout another day.
Yeah, so I think Geovanni is probably saying, right, the Water Spout's enough. Sohaib probably agrees with him by going for the Protect there. But yeah, he is able to get his Rillaboom in now. But with the Serena in that position, it's exactly what you need here for Kyogre to go for another hit. And if somehow Kyogre maybe survives around this turn, it's going to get some more Grassy Terrain recovery, and that will make its Water Spout even stronger. However, Rillaboom is in a decent position to just fire off maybe a non-power attack into the Kyogre slot and pick up a KO, because it's, as you said, the Kyogre is locked into this a very weak Water Spout at the moment. It's not in range of a U-turn. But this Serena does look very strong. Like, that Power Whip took down that Regieleki right down to its Focus Sash. No Grassy Terrain boost. So it looks like a lot of damage might come out from this Serena into the Rillaboom if it's allowed to get a hit off. But something that's quite interesting to look at is the speed interactions between Serena and Rillaboom, because a lot of Serena are trying to outspeed Rillaboom so you can get that U-turn off first before you leave, and so you don't get the hit yourself. But Grassy Glide comes from Serena itself.
And that's going to be able to pick off that Calyrex Shadow Rider very, very easily. Let's see what the Rillaboom is locking into. It's a pretty safe situation to go for something like a Wood Hammer. Even if there is a switch into the Tornadus, it's low enough the Wood Hammer should be able to pick it up quite easily. But it's going to be a knockoff instead. Should be more than enough to get the Kyogre. And down it goes. So a low HP Tornadus and a Tsarina staring down against this Rillaboom and whatever is in the back here for Sohaib. It's going to be that. Well, I don't think we've confirmed what's in the back. Have we?
I'm not sure. Well, we see Regieleki, Suicune.
Oh, that's actually just the Rillaboom. Yeah. Oops. Yeah, just the Rillaboom. So, well, that answers that question. So, an unfortunate situation for Sohaib here. I guess, what even is the answer? I don't really know if there's any way to survive this Helping Hand Hurricane, not from a Life Orb. And I think that's going to be that. Let's see. Down goes the Rillaboom, and it's looking like Geovanni's done just enough to take game number 1. An interesting match, but Sohaib, I mean, it looked like he got into a pretty decent position, but he did lose that Regieleki pretty early on, so losing a few options as far as what he can go for. So maybe that backing him into a little bit of a corner there, not quite able to make it count in game number 1. Geovanni's going to be very, very happy with how that turned out. We'll see if Sohaib could tie it up going into game number 2.
I think so. I'm interested to see what the Calyrex item is actually, because I don't think we actually saw it what it was revealed. And it didn't seem like enough damage to be choice specs, but I could be wrong. I could be off on my Calyrex versus Kyogre counts, but it's still a definitely winnable game, and a quick one too, though. As we saw, Tailwind goes up, and then right, how do you make the most of that, and how do you deal with Kyogre quickly enough? And it looked like, I think if you had a little bit more chip on Kyogre, then suddenly Calyrex doesn't take as much from the Water Spout, and then you survive the second one too, and that would have changed the game going into those middle turns that we saw. So anyway, we're going to get into game 2 now, and I really like the Life Orb on Tornadus as well. I want to talk about that a little bit more, because I playing around with it a bit myself. It's with the Life Orb, you are able to basically guarantee the knockouts on all the Rillabooms that in the world. So it's a really nice option to have, especially as there's so many Rillabooms going around. And the sooner having the Helping Hand as well is just going to further guarantee that after parting shots, etc.
Yeah, so the adaptation is going to be really interesting to see from Sohaib. I don't know necessarily if Geovanni feels like he needs to change something up. It looks like he's sort of considering the Ferrothorn or the Zapdos option in his 4th slot. But we'll have to see. Overall, it looks like he has a pretty good idea of what he wants his game plan to be, leading off with that Tornadus and the Tsarina with the Kyogre in the back. I do like that quite a lot. You don't really want to expose the Kyogre to a turn 1 fake out. That obviously you have Tsarina, but forcing a switch into the Tsarina is already sort of giving up a little bit of pressure. So I do like the idea of sort of leading off with the Tornadus, ensuring that you can get that Tailwind up if that's what you want to go for. Or if you want to go for a Hurricane on a Rillaboom lead or something, maybe switch the Tsarina out into the rain and then just hit it with that Life Orb. And that oftentimes will be enough to take out the Rillaboom, especially if it's running an item like a Miracle Seed.
Yeah, I like that. There's a lot of things both these players can do to try and take this game. I think either way for Sohaib, it's going to be that Suicune that's going to be a really key pawn for his game plan. Because you can lead it versus Kyogre, take a lot of hits. You lead it maybe with an Intimidate, you can take it for grass hits quite well. Lead it with Fake Out, that works out too. It's a really solid option. We haven't seen too many moves from it either. I imagine Water Move, Tailwind, we've seen Helping Hand. And if it's that Snarl, it's able to really weaken Kyogre quite a lot as well. But it's the same lead from Geovanni here and the same lead from Sohaib. Regieleki, Suicune, Serena, Tornadus.
Indeed it is. So I guess the question is, how does Sohaib decide to change this up in order to give him a better chance of victory in this sort of a situation? Now, we did see the Regieleki opt for essentially just clicking the Electroweb button until it died, but let's see. This is going to be... It's always interesting when the Game 2 leads are the same as the Game 1 leads, because it puts you in a position where if you're the player who just won, you have to consider, okay, my opponent has a plan, so, like, what is their plan? Do I change my plan to try to counter their plan? And so far, the Tailwind comes on out, and there's the change up from Sohaib. He sees no Wakan on Tornadus in game number 1, and opts to just Volt Switch right on out of there, takes out the Tornadus, which does provide him the potential to maybe set a second Tailwind if the game goes that long. And obviously, Geovanni is only going to have the single Tailwind for the entirety of this game.
Yeah, he's seen the Life Orb on the Tornadus now, so there's no Focus Sash threat there, no Wakan Berry. He knows he can get that KO immediately. And if he does and Geovanni goes for the Tailwind, he gets the Tailwind up fine. But if he doesn't, if Tornadus doesn't go for the Tailwind, it goes down immediately instead. So, and that means, depending on what Suicune does here, he's in a really nice position to potentially stack his Tailwinds, depending on what is able to come in. So we do see the Tailwind. It does. So he is matching it at the moment, but there's no risk of Geovanni being able to get his leg by going for the play that he did. So he's able to get probably does once. However, we do not see Kyogre is now next to the Serena, and we've seen the Serena have Helping Hand. So it's a very strong option at the moment. And I don't know if we saw... I think we saw Calyrex take a non-Helping Hand boosted one. So with it, it's surely going down.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting turn. Of course, Calyrex does have the option to go for a Protect or something. This is the situation where, on the one hand, if you were able to stall out Tailwind and get another Tailwind, you probably just win the game. But that's much easier said than done. Helping Hand does come out from the Tsarina. There's the Protect. The Suicune should be able to tank this, I think, with the Berry proccing, giving it that little bit of extra HP following the Power Whip. I guess we'll find out. As actually, yes. Just barely Suicune survives. And Suicune's going to get off that Snarl. That's going to be a nice way to mitigate this. So even with a Helping Hand now, there's a good chance that Calyrex would be able to survive. That also provides just a tiny, tiny bit of chip, but not enough that the Astral that we saw in the last game would do.
Yeah, so as we saw, as you said, the Water Spout's going to do even less than it did last time. It's supposed to be a full-powered Water Spout because it's taking a slightly little bit of chip here. So, and Suicune gets to turn the tables back around and go for this same play, but except a lot more damage this time. So Calyrex is taking a very similar amount this time, maybe a tiny little bit more than before. Suicune does go down to a critical hit. It's not sure if that mattered.
If that was the other way around, that would have been very unfortunate.
It would have. But let's see if this is enough for the Serena, actually.
It should be. There's no Assault Vest on this thing, so that's going to go down. Looks like the Kyogre's going to pretty comfortably survive that at this point, but the question comes now, how does it deal with a potential Alecki coming back in? Because that Alecki didn't go down the same way it did in game number 1, so having that option on the field is going to be extremely nice for Sohaib. We've seen some people running sort of bulky Aleckies, but not so much a Focus Sash. A max speed Regieleki, I believe, should still outspeed the Kyogre. So we'll have to see exactly how Geovanni plans to play this, because he doesn't really have many options. He's stuck clicking Water Spout, and I doubt that's going to be enough to even pick up the Regieleki. It should take out the Calyrex if he lands it, but T-Bolt's going to come on in. That's going to be no problem to get rid of the Kyogre, and it looks like the adaptation from Sohaib has at the very least put him into a winning position in game number 2. We'll see if maybe the Zapdos has some magic, but it's not looking like it's going to. Zapdos should go down very easily to this Astral Barrage, and Sohaib taking a pretty convincing game number 2. So very, very nice adaptations from him, and now the ball is in Geovanni's court.
Absolutely. A very excellent win there. I think Tornado so early on got rid of like all it did was just set up Tailwind, go down, and then when you want that to happen, you get your Kyogre and you want it to be able to start dishing out KOs in the position you want. But thanks to that Suicune being so crucially bulky, it was able to get off the Snarl, the opposing Tailwind, and Calyrex did all the damage it needed to do. And to get it, especially allowing Serena to go down instead of maybe sacking Zapdos there, then everything just kind of fell for Geovanni at the end. So it's an interesting dynamic here. Like it seems to there's a lot more weighing on each turns here than our previous games than we've seen. So I'd really like to see how maybe some players may change something up. Maybe if you're Geovanni, maybe you lead something slightly different this time. I mean, Tornadus is protected from Serena from like a fake out, but as we've seen, Sohaib isn't leading Rillaboom at all here. So,
wow.
But
okay.
As we can see, yeah, something's being definitely switched up here. and potentially because Sohaib actually isn't bringing Incineroar at all for this game. And maybe Geovanni wants to maybe capitalize on that. And I can definitely see that working if around the Calyrex, but if it is just that body press, it's not going to be doing a whole lot here.
Yeah, it is the leftovers on it. We haven't seen the moveset on this Ferrothorn yet, but it could be sort of a Leech Seed set, which I believe is more common on the leftovers. There is an Assault Vest variation that was running around at the beginning of the format a little bit, but very, very different movesets, so it's not particularly relevant to this match, although it will be something that Sohaib may have to consider. He has to be aware that Serena was not Assault Vest at this point, just based off the damage it's been taking. So seeing no Assault Vest on the Serena and a Ferrothorn in preview, you might be thinking, okay, it's probably somewhere. It's not on the Serena, so it's got to be on the Ferrothorn. As we know, though, there's not an Assault Vest anywhere on this team.
Exactly. It's a good point. Item guessing game is very real, and we still don't know it actually on what it is on the Calyrex. We've seen it Protect, we've seen it Astral Barrage, and that's about it. So I'm wondering if, say, is that spell tag, you could be running like Astral Barrage and Shadow Ball, just to say cover for the Wide Guard option, maybe Side Shock if you want, maybe substitute. But we haven't really seen a need for either of those moves to be even be revealed yet. So that's still yet to be revealed, but it doesn't make a huge amount of difference for potentially this set. But Sohaib does lead with the Suicune and the Regieleki, arguably his most consistent and gives him quite a few options, but I think he'll definitely be surprised to see the Ferrothorn as the lead here.
Yeah, this is going to make things a little bit awkward. We still have no information on the Ferrothorn set, and it looks like it's actually it's the Iron Defense Body Press, but it's running Gyro Ball instead of Leech Seed. So looks like the Gyro Ball is probably there to cover for a potential Xerneas matchup, but it'll also be pretty nice into that Calyrex. Not quite as good as something like a knockoff, but it'll still dish out quite a lot of damage because, as we all know, Calyrex is a pretty zoomy Pokemon. So, and Ferrothorn is pretty much the opposite. So, I don't know. I have no idea what Gyro Ball calcs from Ferrothorn into Calyrex are, but it's going to be a lot of damage.
Yeah, definitely. The opposite of zooming this thing is planted into the ground with those spines. Incineroar is the switch in for these two Pokemon. So, another switch up yet for Geovanni. Volt Switch is still the play from Sohaib as it was in Game 1. Switches out into something else. Usually it's been Calyrex at the moment that's been coming in as Suicune goes for the Tailwind. And it'll be interesting to see if Sohaib has actually adjusted to bring his own Incineroar, which he actually has here. So he's completely switched it up. I imagine no Rillaboom in the back potentially, as he didn't even need it last time. So an excellent switch up for Sohaib, and Geovanni's probably a little bit surprised if I were him too. And Tailwind does go up as well.
Yeah, the Gyro Ball is going to be able to come on in. It's a resisted hit by that Aleki, but because of the speed difference, still does decent damage into it. Not so much into the Incineroar, especially at -1. So an effectively wasted turn there by Geovanni as far as setup goes, which is really unfortunate for him. If he clicked something like an Iron Defense, then he would be in a better position for this turn. But as you mentioned earlier, it doesn't do very much against the Calyrex. So, fortunately for Geovanni, though, it does look like his Incineroar is faster, or at least lucky enough to win a speed tie. The Scald is going to proc the Berry. No safety goggles on this Incineroar, which is pretty nice for this matchup. But overall, this is a very, very important turn for Geovanni. He's going to get that Iron Defense up, so it should be able to survive an Incineroar hit relatively comfortably. But again, if it takes a Flare Blitz and survives, it's still going to be in range for that Calyrex, which is just the most important thing.
It is. It's like, depending on the special defensive bulk of this Ferrothorn, it may be able to take a couple of those Astral Barrages, especially after the leftovers, especially after further protects. And you also have the range to prevent it taking too much damage from the Flare Blitz. But anyway, Scald comes out from this week into this, and it's just actually able to hang on here. So it's going to be able to pivot out and get itself straight back in, which is going to be very nice, especially versus other Calyrex into psychic type attacks. But it has used up its berry, so it's going to go down to anything at the moment. But and as you said, Stefan, earlier, like, it's just about getting everything in range of Calyrex, and Incineroar, which is a big counter Calyrex, is now in that range.
Interesting to note that it is, in fact, a speed tie between the Incineroars, so a bit of a fortunate turn 2 for Geovanni, actually getting that Iron Defense up. Opting for the Kyogre here, that will keep the Ferrothorn safe. Obviously, -1 Incin in rain using Flare Blitz into a +2 Ferrothorn is not going to do very much, despite the double super effective nature of the attack. Kyogre, though, this is a very scary position for Kyogre to be in for Sohaib. If you switch something in, it's going to take an insane amount of damage. If you don't, that Incineroar is not long for this world.
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe we'll see a sweeping go for the Snarl here. It knows it's going to be able to live a hit, even if it's the Thunder. So Incineroar does go down. So Sohaib's probably arguably one of his best answers for Ferrothorn is now down. But if this is a Snarl, Sohaib's going to be able to bring in something a little bit more safely, but still take a heap of damage. And if it is that Calyrex, it's going to offer a lot more damage. But with the Gyro Ball, yeah, like, maybe a Water Spout plus a Gyro Ball is enough for it, because I'd imagine it does at least 50%. You've probably got that 150 base power on that Gyro Ball. So it's an excellent pick at the moment, especially now Incineroar is down. Even without the Leech Seed, Ferrothorn is looking kind of all right. Thing is, though, Geovanni has revealed the Gyro Ball now, so Sohaib's a little bit wary of that. So it'd be interesting to see how he plays around it. So he does bring in the Regieleki here, which I think is a smart move.
So, an interesting note, I ran a calc. Obviously, I don't know the the EV spreads of these Pokemon, but it looks like, even if it's a spell tag, Helping Hand, Astral Barrage, it looks like the Ferrothorn should be able to live that. So that could be a pivotal thing in this game. Obviously, some chip damage is going to be very, very important here for Sohaib to manage to eventually pick off the Ferrothorn when the Calyrex comes back in. But another question is, does he know that? As a player, I don't exactly know all of my Ferrothorn calcs because I don't run into it very much. So it's going to be one of those really interesting situations where you also don't know what the spread's going to be because, it's an uncommon Pokemon, so it doesn't have like a stock standard spread, right? So it's not as easy to infer what the damage output's going to be onto that. So that Ferrothorn is eventually going to be the most important part of this matchup. The question is, which way does it swing the scales?
Yes, and a Body Press to Suicune is going to be one of the ways it swings, and now it's got that Iron Defense boost. It's going to be offering a lot more damage now. Leftovers heals it right back up to full, and it's looking actually in a really strong position here. I think Geovanni was maybe expecting Sohaib not to bring his Incineroar to this game 3, and then Sohaib does, but he just deals with it because he's running a Kyogre team. So Sohaib brings in his Calyrex in the rain as Geovanni now switches in his Tornadus. So he's able to potentially get up another Tailwind if it comes to it. But at the moment, Ferrothorn doesn't even need that. It just needs to live. So, and we know this Regieleki is Focus Sash, so we might be able to use it to pick that off. And as well as having Icy Wind, that would put the Regieleki, which is normally faster than a Choice Scarf Kyogre, in range of his Kyogre that's in the back too.
This is interesting, though, because with the Tailwind up on the other side of the field, his own Tailwind for Geovanni will guarantee that he can pick off the Calyrex with essentially any chip damage when that Kyogre comes back out. Of course, the problem remains with the Regieleki still outspeeding it, but can Geovanni do anything to remove this Regieleki right now? I think he has to go for the Tailwind and then just manage to remove it with the Tornadus next turn if it somehow lives. Maybe the Regieleki reads a Protect or something, but overall, this is a very, very weird turn that will probably decide the outcome of this game. The Tailwind comes in, Thunderbolt's going to do more than enough, Tornadus is going to go down, And now actually single target Astral Barrage should do a lot of damage. It's not going to KO, I don't think. Ooh, Nasty Plot is revealed.
Right.
Very cool. All right, how much does the Gyro Ball do? Let's see. That's a lot less than I would have expected. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, actually, that's a lot less than I thought. Maybe there's not a lot of attack investment on this because you're an iron defense body press with a gyro kind of takes on. Maybe you don't have a lot of attack investment. Maybe it's all in special defense, so to patch up the stat that you're not boosting. So, and plus you're in Tailwind, so you could have risen your own speed. So maybe that's made slightly a bit of difference too. But
yeah, this is a weird one. I feel like Geovanni has to go for like a Scald on the Calyrex and hope that the Kyogre can somehow survive. It is a Sash Regieleki, so it's not, you know, Life Orb or Specs or anything like that, but Kyogre, it has a lot of special defense, but it doesn't like taking Regieleki hits. Even with that Focus Sash, Regieleki still does so much damage with that Transistor ability. And I think a lot of this is going to come down to what happens here. But it goes for the... the Electroweb misses the wrong Pokemon from Geovanni's perspective. And that should just be enough. Sohaib at +2? Did he get a KO? Is it even +3? Well, I don't think it's going to matter, David.
I think it's just +2. Yeah, that Astral Barrage is absolute nuke. And critical Kyogre just to seal it up. I don't think that mattered. But yeah, that is the Calyrex Shadow team in a nutshell. Like, and even with boosting up with the Nasty Plot, I was just talking about how like Calyrex Shadow is like, oh, you could just send it on the field, you can just dish out damage instantly. It just does a lot of damage, but you can also set it up, and that was exactly the point that you needed to set it up in as well, to just completely obliterate the Sperathorn. So a really well played game from Sohaib, and a really fast paced one too. It's really quite refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. We've seen a lot of games today that have been slow, drawn out, every move deliberately giving you like a 1% advantage. And then suddenly this one is just about, all right, I have my big damage boy. I have my big damage boy. Who will position them to just blow through the team faster? And in this case, Sohaib managed to do that twice as opposed to the single win of Geovanni. So a nice win for the United States to start things off. And that's a pretty big one as well. I mean, we talked about it a little bit before. El Salvador has some really, really good players, but you really need your heavy hitters like Geovanni to be taking in some wins for them. So now a lot of pressure onto the rest of that lineup, and the U.S. has to be feeling pretty good starting their week off with a win like this.
Absolutely, and it was a really fantastic win as well. Not a lot of Calyrex Shadow Rider running around, and that puts one of their best players, who's 5-0, to now 6-0. So he's probably at least sixth in like the whole ranking. So and so in the top 16, that is a really impressive showing. So we've had some fantastic games this whole stream, Stefan. It's been excellent. And USA are now up a little bit higher. We'll have to see how the rest of the matches play out over the course of the weekend. As we've seen, most of the matches seem to be played then. So stay up to date with the website where the rankings and the matches and all the teams that everyone is using are all up to date very quickly after all the matches are done. So be sure to check those out, and be sure to also check out the YouTube channel where a lot of the matches that aren't streamed are also uploaded onto there. Especially useful for a little bit of scouting out and team building for the next week that's been coming up. So from both of us here and from Victory Road, it's been a pleasure for the Friday session here. So this has been the Victory World Cup, sponsored by Elgato. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. And be sure to tune in for Saturday's excellent games, where we would have seen a little bit of a progression of everyone's standings throughout all the teams. So from Stefan and I, good night.
Goodbye.